The COVID-19 pandemic has damaged and altered the structure of society and the Jewish community at large around the world. What are the decisions facing worldwide Jewish leadership in response to this crisis? Herb Kanan will take this next panel.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for the next panel. And the title of the panel is Jewish Leadership in the Fight Against COVID-19. Joining us will be Mr. Robert Singer, the chairman of the World Ort Board of Trustees and chairman of the Sparrow Group, Mr. Aaron Frankel, the chairman of the Euro-Asian Jewish Congress, and Marina Yudborovsky, the CEO of the Genesis Philanthropy Group. Let me start, please, with Mr. Singer. Tell me, Robert, is there a Jewish response to COVID-19?
Thank you. I think that the main issue here is not the Jewish response to COVID-19, it's the Jewish response to emergency situations. And I think that on this panel, actually, you have somebody who knows the best how to do it, and it's Aaron Frankel. When I first came to the former Soviet Union in 1989, it was a huge crisis of Soviet Jewry leaving the country. There was a need of somebody who pick up this situation and organize the flights. And this credit belongs to Aaron. And also during this crisis of COVID-19, one day I kind of open a newspaper and I see all the breathing machines arriving to Israel, and I just said to myself, how actually, what's going on here and who is behind this? And and then in the small letters I found that it was a donation of Aaron. So I think that what the crisis does usually brings new leadership. It brings people or organizations that are weak are disappearing. People who emerge from this are the people who are next leaders of the Jewish community, and this is exactly what happened here. So I don't think it's a specific response to COVID-19, because Jews, as everybody else, are stuck at home. We are here in Tel Aviv, in Monaco, in Monsey, and so it's not this kind of crisis. But of course, all of us are doing many things to resolve it. But basically, we really have to see it as an opportunity of revival, or an opportunity of doing things differently. And I think that this is going to change also in the months to come.
Aaron, tell me, how are Jewish groups helping in the fight against COVID?
So I can say that you have few organizations which are working day to day even before the COVID-19, and they are proved to be efficient. So what is working in normal days to my opinion, is working also very good at emergency situation. So instead of to create some new platform or new organization, we took a ride on existing organization like Yad Sarah in Israel, like existing hospitals, which we should enforce and buy and deliver some more equipment, and to do our best as an organization and as individuals to help to whom is close to your heart. So that's what we did.
Marina, are there any new initiatives coming from the Jewish organizations during this crisis, do you know of?
I think so. I think a lot of folks in the philanthropic community have expanded their mandates, ourselves included. We don't normally do any humanitarian work. We don't do social services. That's not our area of focus. But when this crisis hit and it became clear that this was going to be a long-term and global challenge, we felt we needed to expand that mandate, and our board was very supportive of this. And I know a lot of organizations are pivoting in a similar way and are looking at the humanitarian needs that are coming out of this within the Jewish community and beyond, and are also looking at what we can do to maintain the landscape of kind of Jewish communal services and activities, because certainly whenever this is behind us, and at some point, of course, it will be, we want to have a robust landscape of organizations and professionals who can really continue the work of engaging the Jewish community, of providing services to those who are in need, and all the myriad of activities that the Jewish community has been engaging in very successfully. I also think that there's always a silver lining to a challenge, and there are a number of silver linings in the current situation. This has pushed innovation. This has pushed organizations to do new things, to remain relevant in a situation where people can't come through their doors. We're seeing tremendous activity on those fronts. Not all of them are successful. It's going to take time for these models to sort of come to fruition and for us to find best practices in this new environment. But I'm certain that we're going to take some of this with us even beyond the pandemic.
Can you give me some examples of those initiatives or that new innovative approach?
I think across almost every endeavor, we're seeing things that we hadn't seen before. So obviously, we're seeing every kind of virtual event imaginable. And what we're finding is some things work better than others, right? We're all getting more technologically proficient in every age group, for better or for worse, right? Children are becoming more adept at sort of consuming programming virtually, and there's some challenges inherent in that. Seniors are becoming more proficient at getting their services this way. We're seeing conferences that are truly engaging, forums like this, and panels that are happening virtually and are getting tremendous audiences. We're also seeing organizations capitalize on the fact that geographic borders don't matter as much in this sort of virtual world, both in terms of the kinds of people that they can bring as speakers and as participants. So organizations that used to be localized to their specific geography are now engaging people around the country where they are, but often around the world. And these are audiences that they're going to certainly try to retain. We're also seeing new models of engagement in terms of scale, right? Organizations across the world are learning how to do things with, they're breaking up big events into multiple smaller events, and we're learning that sometimes we don't need to travel for certain things, that we can do things just as effectively virtually, though that's not true for everything.
Robert, let me ask you this question, because I know that one of the big challenges facing Jewish organizations, and you've been in the philanthropic world for many years, is fundraising, right? I mean, businesses are getting clobbered by the virus. This is having an effect on fundraising. How do you overcome that? How do Jewish organizations deal with that?
I think it's a bit too soon to understand what exactly is happening. From what I see and the people I know, like some people in this participating in this conference, people committed their donations at least till the end of 2021 at the level of 2019 or 2020, and some donors even increased their donations. So I think on the side of the big foundations and some of the big donors, I think it's I don't think it will be a dramatic decrease in foundations giving. But I do think that on, for example, organization like we're having in Org, like membership organizations, or Adasa, or WITSO, organizations of this kind, that people are giving 20, 18, 25, 50, $100, it's a completely different setup. There are more local needs, as I'm sure Marina can testify, so more money needs to be invested locally, the communities and the families, and so less money of this kind will be available. But I think it's too soon. It also depends, of course, how long this crisis will continue. So at this stage, we are looking into another 10 to 12 months at least. So I think that at this stage, small organizations or weak organizations probably will disappear. In Israel, they are speaking about some 40% of Amutot or of NGOs that will just disappear from the field.
Wow.
I guess more or less it's going to be the same. But the big ones, or the strong ones, and the ones that are dealing with the issues of COVID and the health and the education and the things of this kind, which is challenging. I think that there is a good chance that they will survive and will be fine.
Aaron, how do you have any thoughts on how to keep the smaller donors involved or engaged in this period when you can't have big meetings or big conferences? How do you give just the guy in the street, how do you keep them involved?
We try to keep both, the small and the big ones, so we don't give up on anyone. So what I did, I say to every dollar which is giving, I will match and double it. So this is the way what we do, and we collect about $5 million, and beside that, it very much depends for what you're collecting. I want to touch the point which Robert answered before. I think it's a shift within the frame of the committed allocation people that give money to different targets. I mean, if the idea was to give to ABC, because of the situation, they shift a bit. Some others, we don't need to hide, are affected by the corona, and the businesses are affected. So they either don't have the means now, or don't have the mood. To give, you need to have good mood, open heart. So I believe that the cause, which is related to the need now, is working always, and we did it quite successfully, and I find this matching system working unbelievably well. People would like that every $100,000 they give, or every dollar became 200,000, and not on their account, so on somebody else's account. So it's worked for us very well. And beside that, I want to mention that you need, in the circumstances, you need really to find well for what are you looking for money. When the corona started, and it was kind of a bit of a panic, and the main issue was oxygen, respiratory machines, ventilators, etc. So this is the first thing we did, and we did not do it necessary for the hospital, which this is really the government and the insurance company task. We did it for those thousands of people which suffering home, and really they don't breathe well. They are not good to move to the hospital because they will catch more viruses there. But they don't feel well. They're under pressure. Physically, they don't breathe well, and start to have a mental problem. Some people from the fear didn't feel well, and we supplied thousands of oxygen units to homes. So and we reduce the pressure on the hospitals, because if all those 5,000-6,000 people that we serve home will attack the emergency rooms in the hospital, they will collapse. So we supply them home with equipment, with nurse, with doctors visiting, giving them everything. So the pressure was never dramatically on the hospitals. And that's what we did. We brought more than 5 jumbos and 787s full with equipment from China. When everybody ran to find, and here and there, we had very low-profile activity. Every week we have 1 or 2 aircraft coming full with equipment, and right away distribution to the branches and to the homes of people necessary. So we did well.
Marina, let me ask you this question, because again, I mean, I'm aware of the difficulties a lot of Jewish communities around the world are having dealing with this problem, financial difficulties, smaller communities really being strained. What responsibility do you think Israel has, if at all, in helping these communities, I mean, even financially? I mean, is there a shift of paradigm here now, whereas in the past the Jewish communities would financially help Israel, now the tables have been reversed perhaps, and it's Israel's turn to step up to the plate and help these communities?
Well, Well, I think I can echo what Robert said early on, which is that I'm not sure this is as much of a turning of the tables, right? Israel has, for a long time, had as one of its sort of focuses helping in urgent and critical situations around the world, Jewish and non-Jewish, by the way. And I think that has borne itself out here. Because this is a global crisis, it's unique in that sense that we're all really in the same boat. So I think the global challenge across the board is that we're all facing the same thing, and it's quite difficult, obviously, it's always easier when the challenge is in one place and everyone else is doing okay, and we can sort of focus resources, and that's not an option here. So I think that there's been a sort of spreading out of who can do what. And I think Israel, for example, had things very under control during the first wave and could focus some energies externally. And I think that we're all taking turns depending on what situation we're in. We're seeing the same thing across Europe. We've, for example, focused on a lot of those places who don't have the same kind of robust philanthropic infrastructure of large donors and large foundations, like some smaller European communities, because it's an area we're familiar with and where we know that help is needed. And I know that Israel is also focusing their efforts on those places where they can make a difference and where other resources are scarce. And the fact that they're able to do this, I think, is, sort of underscores that question of peoplehood. It's just not something new. I think, again, to what Robert said, these are, thankfully, systems the Jewish communal world has had and has been able to leverage in other crises. And they are standing us in good stead today.
Robert, let me turn that question to you. What do you think is Israel's responsibility in this to Jewish communities abroad?
You asking me?
Yes.
So, as an Israeli, I just want to touch upon the previous question. I think that one of the things that is going to happen is like people like Aaron Frankel and Boris Loshkin and Michael Milashvili and Marina and the Genesis and myself, like Wolf Gold and the others. We understand now much better the need for us to work together, coordinate, and usually in the usual days, everybody goes different direction, and we're trying to be very unique and stuff like this. Times like this, we have to come together, and what Aaron and Marina said, that's exactly what needed to be done. Speaking about Israel, I have a very kind of a problematic point of view, because I do think it's an elephant in the room, and I do think it's a big issue that needs to be dealt with. And that's why about a month ago I established here a Center for Jewish Impact in order to deal with issues like this. What happened here is that Jews around the world that always knew that Israel is the place for them in the time of crisis, suddenly with the COVID-19, the flights were cut off. They stayed in one place, the Israelis stayed in a different place. And I personally think that Israel didn't do enough. We have our own problems here in Israel, but I definitely don't think that Israel did enough in order to help Jewish communities, and they could do much more. So we have here the situation that Aaron is sending planes from China to Israel to help the Israelis, and Israelis that do have a lot of know-how on these issues didn't exactly do the same with the Jewish community. So let's put it this way, could do much more. And this is something that will need to be developed. Aaron and I saw it when anti-Semitic accidents and the security problems started with the communities. We were 100% sure that Israel will step in to this plate, and it wasn't done enough. A little bit was done, but not enough. And I think that COVID-19 brought a very similar situation. And that's why maybe it's an opportunity, really. We have here 36 ministers, and one of them is the Minister of Diaspora. But we do think it goes really to the top, to the cabinet. And this issue of how Israel deals in the time of crisis in Jewish communities worldwide, it's a big issue and needs to be addressed properly.
Okay, thank you. I'm afraid that that's all we're going to have time for now, but that is a big question that hopefully will be on the Israeli agenda. How much Israel, what deal of responsibility does Israel have to communities abroad? Thank you very much, and have a good day.
Thank you.